Hey y'all, this is Megan, and in this video, we are sewing up the Paris Palazzos. I'm doing the shorts option in this tutorial with the drawstring waistband. If you want to see the videos on this cute gathered side panel option or the simple pants option or how to sew the pocket, then I will link those videos down below. The first step for the simple pant or shorts without a pocket is going to be to put your front and back piece right sides together, and you are going to sew them from the waist down to the hem using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Since this pattern is for woven fabrics, after you sew the seam, you're going to want to finish it either with a zigzag or overlock stitch on your sewing machine or using your serger. Then you're going to repeat this step for your other front and back pieces. Make sure if you're using a solid or something that doesn't have a good front or back that you're doing this the opposite way so you have one front and back for each leg. This next step is optional, but I really like to do this. I'm going to create a memory press on the bottom hemline before I sew the inseam because it's easier to do this flat than in the round later. I like to serge the bottom of my hemline without cutting any off, and then I take it to my iron and I press the hem. There is a 1/2 inch hem included in this pattern, so you can either create a narrow hem by pressing a 1/4 inch and then another 1/4 inch up if you don't have a serger to finish this, or what I like to do is just again serge that hemline and then press a 1/2 inch up. And I actually am going to press a 1 inch hem because I wanted my shorts a little bit shorter, so that's what you see here. The next step is going to be to sew the inseam of the shorts or pants. So you are going to align them again, the front and back pieces, so they are right sides together. And you are going to pin them from that crotch all the way to the hem. And you are going to stitch this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Again, after this is stitched, you are going to finish the seam either with a zigzag overlock on your sewing machine or your serger. You're going to repeat this on the other leg as well, and I like to press one of the inseams to the back side and one to the front side so that they are nested in this next step. Then I just repress that memory press. You should have one leg inside out and one leg out right side out. You're going to put the right side out leg inside the other so that they are right sides together. And you are going to pin them together along that crotch curve from the top of the front waist to the back of the back waist. And again, I like to nest the seams at the inseam. Once you have this all pinned together, you are going to sew the front and back pieces along that crotch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you have these sewn together, again, you are going to finish that seam however you like with your sewing machine or your serger. Then you can pull them right side out and you can just set the short pieces aside for a moment while we work on the waistband. If you're doing the drawstring option, then you're going to cut a small rectangle of interfacing and apply it to the wrong side of your front waistband behind your buttonhole or grommet markings. Then you are going to either add your buttonholes, which I'm doing here, or install your grommet, eyelet, etc. at the markings on your pattern piece. Set that front waistband aside and we are going to make our drawstring. You're going to take your two drawstring pieces and put them right sides together, and you're going to stitch them together at one short end with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to just press this seam open to reduce bulk here. And then you're going to press the drawstring in half, right sides together long ways, and then stitch it together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can press this seam open or use pinking shears here to trim down the seam if your fabric frays. Then you'll flip your drawstring right side out and give it a nice press again. And then just set that aside while we work on our waistband piece. You're going to take your front and back waistband pieces and place them right sides together, and you're going to stitch them together at each short end using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. This seam is going to be enclosed, so you can either press this seam open like I'm doing here, or you can finish it with a serger, whichever you'd like. Once you have those side seams sewn, you are going to press that waistband in half again, wrong sides together. And you're going to place a pin at the center front and back waistband. With right sides together, you are going to pin your waistband to your short or pants, matching the center front waistband to the front center seam. The side seams of your waistband should match the side seams of your shorts, so you also pin it together there, along with pinning them together at the center back. You're going to stitch the waistband to the top of the shorts or pants using a 1/2 inch seam allowance and leaving a 2 to 3 inch opening so that we can thread our elastic through that opening. So grab your elastic and a bodkin or a safety pin, and you are going to thread the elastic through that opening of the entire waistband. When you have it threaded through, you are going to overlap the elastic ends by a 1/2 inch, and you are going to use a stretch stitch. I like to use a zigzag to sew the ends together, and I kind of sew a little rectangle around that 1/2 inch overlap and then back and forth a few times to hold it in place. And then you're going to align and pull the elastic so that it is evenly spread in the waistband, which you can see I'm doing here. And then we need to close that opening that we left in the waistband, that 2 to 3 inches. So you are going to take it to your sewing machine, and you do kind of have to stretch the elastic and use a 1/2 inch seam allowance to close that little opening. And after you have the opening stitched closed, then you need to go ahead and finish that waist seam using a serger or a zigzag stitch. Then again, you can flip your waistband up and stretch. Make sure your elastic is evenly spread before the next step. You are going to take it to your sewing machine and you are going to stitch on the markings that are on your waistband. And as you're stitching, you are stretching the elastic. You must use a stretch stitch here. I like to use a longer triple stitch. You could also use a narrow zigzag if you wanted to, but you are going to stitch along both lines that are marked directly on the elastic. If you don't stretch your elastic as you sew, then these stitches are going to pop. So you're doing it on the top line and on the bottom line. This is both to hold the elastic in place, and this is also creating a casing for your drawstring. I really like to stitch my elastic down so it doesn't move around while I'm wearing it. You could also just stitch it in the ditch on the side seams or front and back center if you don't like this look and you are not doing the drawstring option. If you're doing the drawstring option, you must do this to create the casing. Once that is sewn, you're going to use a safety pin or bobbin to thread your drawstring through the casing, through those buttonholes or grommets. Once those are threaded and even, I like to use a stretch stitch to tack down the center back drawstring so that it doesn't come out of the casing when I'm washing it or wearing it. Then you just need to finish the ends of your drawstring. To do this, you're going to press a 1/4 inch to the wrong side and then another 1/4 inch and then just edge stitch it in place to hold it. Then the final step is just to hem your pants or shorts. So you will repress that memory press and edge stitch the hem in place. Again, it has a 1/2 inch hem allowance allowed in the pattern. I wanted my shorts a little bit shorter, so I am doing a 1 inch hem here. And then your Paris palazzos are complete. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them down below and I will try to answer them. If you make a pair of Paris shorts or pants, then we would love to see them. Please tag us on Instagram at Made for Mermaids, hashtag Made for Mermaids Patterns, hashtag Paris Patterns, or post it in our Facebook group. We love to see your creations.